On this episode, we take a look at the short-lived ABC Sonic the Hedgehog animated series. From its early concept, story changes from the game, to its development, and even discuss the failed pitches to bring it back. All this and more on SEGA Talk.
SegaBits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello and welcome to SEGA Talk, episode 127. I'm your host, George, and with me, like always, is my animated sidekick, Barry.
Now I feel like I need to be animated. Up, over, and gone.
Perfect. That's perfect. Today we're obviously discussing the Sonic the Animated series from ABC, which would this, I know there was two series that came out at the same time, so would this be considered the first one?
I mean, from what I remember, the way it operated was it was like they had a deal for both a Saturday morning one and a weekday one. And there was an option for it to be like the same series, and like different studios would basically work on different episodes. And a great example of that actually is Beetlejuice. If you've ever seen that cartoon, if you check out the DVD, there's two kind of like distinct feels for the show. And it turns out that one is the Saturday morning version of Beetlejuice and one is the weekday version. And basically the difference is one spends more time in the human world and the other one spends all its time in like the ghost world. And so I don't know, I mean, we'll get into it, but I don't know how this show rolled out. But there was definitely this idea that it could have been Sonic the Hedgehog and you get like cheaper animation during the week and then you get better animation. But obviously, as we'll soon learn, this show's so like story-driven and episodic that I just don't think two studios could have handled it.
Right.
But, yeah.
So, you want to pitch our Patreon like we usually do at the beginning?
Absolutely. So we are on patreon.com/SegaBits, and I'm actually checking it out myself right now. I just typed it in, and wowie wow, look at this. So we've got a lot of patrons. We're currently at 28. I'd love to see it at 30.
Right.
But, hey, 28's not nothing. And what you can do there is you can support us at any tier. You will get the show in an audio format a week early. You can also go a little higher and get video format a week early. And a little bit higher, and you get both of those, plus you get to pick what we talk about. And this one was a pick, wasn't it, George? Who was our picker?
I didn't see the file. I literally just you told me you're going to cover this, and I did the notes for it. I actually didn't even check.
So the picker for this one is Nicholas Schaefer.
Ah, long-time supporter.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So I guess once you tell me to read his memories, we will, and that's a Patreon perk as well.
You could just read his memories now, so then we'll get into the episode.
All right, let's load him up here. So Nicholas Schaefer says, this show has such a special place in my heart. For most of my childhood, the closest thing I had to video games was the Sonic 3 game cart. Just the game, no system to play it on. I used to watch all three Sonic cartoons along with Mario, Donkey Kong, and Mega Man cartoons, just eating up all those video game worlds I wanted to explore. My favorite of all of them was SatAM. Honestly, this is the show that made me fall in love with Sonic's character, which I usually have as the standard that I measure all other versions of Sonic against. Wow. Something that I loved about this show was how it established the lore behind the rings and how the world works. It also gave real emotional depth as it explored with the aftermath of Robotnik and his robotization of poor Uncle Chuck. I also appreciate how in the 90s it had strong female characters in Sally and Bunny, who actually had character and were not just damsels in distress or simply the love interest. Robotnik was truly scary in this. He wasn't trying to take over the world. He already had. And that voice and those eyes, pure evil chills from those. But more than anything, I have to say I love the theme song. It perfectly describes what Sonic is with perfect 90s cartoon intro music. Can't wait for you all to talk about it.
And yeah, the intro for this is one of the best, I would say. It also, like, I think, what was the other one? Sonic X didn't have that bad of an intro either. But, like, can you think of one Sonic TV show that had a really bad intro?
I've heard people recently complain that Sonic Prime lacks an intro. It's just a logo. Right. So I guess that would be the one. I also would say that Sonic Boom's American intro is kind of a step down from the French intro, which is longer and has more music. So, yeah, I think the downgraded Sonic Boom intro and Sonic Prime are probably the worst. Best for me, honestly, is Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I love that intro, especially with the prelude where it says, like, Bobot Entertainment Presents with the big, like, marquee that comes across. Right. It's just, for me, that's kind of the equivalent of putting in the game cartridge and seeing, like, Sonic run across and it says SEGA, you know. So, it's an epic intro. But this one's good, too.
So, let's talk about our memories with the Sonic the cartoon. And it's kind of hard because we were really young during this period and there was two Sonic shows at the same time. So, sometimes you'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember this show, but it's really the other show. But what was your relationship with Sonic, the ABC Saturday morning show?
So, as I'm sure I've shared many times, and I don't think we've done Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog yet. We will soon. But, you know, as you can see, like, I'm a fan of that cartoon. I have a lot of the animation cells. I just, you know, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It was really one of my introductions to the franchise, outside of the first game, because, you know, the first game, when it came out, it just was one of the many video games I played, and really it wasn't until Sonic 2 came out, and then shortly thereafter the animated series hit, that they really started to develop these as, like, a multimedia franchise where we could watch them in cartoons, we could read about them in comic books, and, you know, to us as kids, it was all one big story. It was, you know, kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog 1, the game, and then Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the game, and then Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which would then lead into the Saturday morning cartoon series where, you know, you kind of had to do some mental gymnastics as a kid to be like, how did the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog Robotnik, like this guy, turn into basically this guy? Like, right. How did they, like, you can see them both next to each other there above my head. Like, how did they do that? But, you know, once you get over that, you can kind of form this complete story there. And this was before Sonic 3 came out and Sonic and Knuckles, so that kind of threw everything off. But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, for me, you know, I was really Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and then I heard about this show, but it was kind of hard to catch because it only aired once on Saturdays. So if you missed it, it's not like it was airing throughout the week or there were reruns. There weren't DVDs at the time or VHS tapes even. So you really had to, like, do the work to catch this show. And I think because it was so... It wasn't insanely episodic. It's not like a lot of shows are now. But still, like, if you're coming in, like, to, like, episode 6 or whatever, like, you can get a little lost unless you're reading the comics and you have a little more of an idea of the characters. So for me, the cartoon was never as big for me just because it was, I just think, so hard to find. And I'd love to look at TV listings and see what was airing against it, because I bet there was, like, a show that I liked more than...
Well, you know. I was gonna talk. There is a section where we'll talk about why it was canceled, and it's another TV show that aired against it, and we'll talk about that very popular TV show. But my history with the show was basically I would watch it Saturday, right, like everyone else. A couple of times there was the other show that we'll talk about later that was more popular that I was more into, but So I remember more Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog because it was on the weekdays, but I was pretty obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog because of these shows. I think the cartoons really did it for me. I remember, like, during Christmas, making my own little Sonic ornaments, and obviously I was trying to draw the animated Sonic the Hedgehog with the weird eye thing that's way different than the video game version of it. I don't know. I just really, really got into it. I thought that the world was cool because it had more characters, which is something that eventually came through with the video games. They added a lot of characters, but for a while it was literally just Sonic, Tails, and Robotnik or Eggman. So, yeah, definitely a fan of these shows. I think they were a very smart idea at the time because Mario didn't really have that great of shows at this time period. So I think Sega did a really good and interesting job with the comic and this show, which did have tie-in early on. So let's talk about the overview of the series. Sonic the Hedgehog is an animated television series based on the video game series. It was edited by Lene Jansen. I think they were the same people that did the New Adventures of Ghostbusters, and produced by Dick Productions, which obviously did that same show. Dick? It's not Dick, right?
No, it's not Dick.
It has a C on it. I always thought it was Dick, and I thought it was funny. But anyway, Sega of America and an Italian studio. I can't even say this word. Italia? So, Italia, I don't know, association. So, it was an Italian studio that made it? I didn't know that. So, obviously, it's also Sonic cartoon following Sonic Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, features a more dramatic and dark story compared to the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog series that we talked about. It's obviously refers to as SatAM because of its time slot at Saturday morning. The program only aired 2 seasons for 26 episodes on ABC from September 18th, 1993 to December 3rd, 1994, and continued to do reruns until 1995. A 3rd season was planned, but ABC canceled the show, ending it with a cliffhanger. Obviously, fans have decided... I mean, it's a very big cult hit with fans. But yeah, so I guess at this point we could talk about why it was canceled. So apparently there was a little TV show that came out in 1993 called The Power Rangers. I don't know if you heard of this show. It was pretty popular with kids. It had hundreds of episodes, so I think it ran most of the week. At least reruns ran on Fox during the daytime. I'm not sure if it like originally came out Saturdays.
Yeah, you know, I can tell you right now because I'm Wikipedia. I didn't know this has TV schedules. So, in the fall and spring of '93, Sonic the Hedgehog was on, but Sonic the Hedgehog during its debut was going up against Garfield and Friends and Bobby's World. And I'll be honest, I loved Garfield and Friends, and I also really liked Bobby's World. So I could see the competition
was pretty
there.
Sick.
And you were right. Yeah, in the fall of '94, Sonic went up against Power Rangers, and it also went up against, for whatever reason, the animated version of Beethoven. Remember those movies, The Big Dog?
Yeah, I used to watch the movies, but didn't even know they had an animated show.
No real competition there. But yeah, it definitely was Power Rangers that I think killed it.
And it's, you talked about Beetlejuice. We talked about a little bit about the New Adventures of Ghostbusters and
Real Ghostbusters, yeah.
Real Ghostbusters, sorry.
Yeah.
The thing that was weird about this time period is that all these movies of real life people were getting animated series, and like you said, Beethoven got one too. It was a real life movie. I think now we're going backwards. Where like One Piece just got a real life TV show, and all the classic Disney movies are getting real life adaptations, where like back then it was the real life movies were getting kids show adaptations. So it's
do you remember that period of time where like 3 Jim Carrey movies had cartoons at the same time. It was Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Ace Ventura. They were all cartoons.
Wow, I do remember
Yeah.
The Mask. I don't remember the other ones. And
Dumb and Dumber
sorry.
was weird. Do you remember the show Two Stupid Dogs?
Yes, I do remember that.
It was animated in that style, so they were like it was weird because there was 3 different Jim Carreys on TV, but they had different voice actors and like completely different styles. But yeah, it was a weird time for TV.
It was like, I don't know, they were just trying to put everything as animated. I think something like Sonic the Hedgehog, which was a video game and you wanted to sell toys and all that, it made sense. But Beethoven, like, were they that strapped for any IP where they're like, Beethoven, the kids movie? It's so weird.
Yeah.
So, the show was actually pitched by CEO Tom Kalinske and the newly appointed at the time Consumer Products Director Michelini Rosley, and they approached I want to say Dick Entertainment, but I can't say Dick, right? Dick.
Did you see the intro? It's always Deke.
Yeah, I always thought it said Dick, but Deke. Entertainment CEO Andy Hayward and ABC Network about a show featuring Sonic. According to Robbie London, Deke originally made a deal for Saturday morning ABC show that was more lighthearted and was planned for the fall of 1992, as reflected with the episode named Heads and Tails, or Heads or Tails. That's the first prototype show. And also early promotional materials found in Fleetway's Sonic the Hedgehog comic, which we have some of it here, and it's totally different show, at least from what we got. We got a bat as a creature. We got this. What is she, like a fox? She kind of looks like Tails, like a female.
Oh,
Tails
is this like the Freedom Fighters picture?
Right, the Freedom
yeah,
Fighters.
It's like
too.
It's the Flicky. The Flicky, but it's like a mad scientist bird.
Wait, are we looking at the Freedom, the one right here for the? You're
The
looking at the one,
Freedom Team?
right? It has a bunny. It has one of the Flickies. It has the female with the red dress. What is that? A chick? Is that like a rooster?
So it's Princess Acorn, Johnny Lightfoot, Porker Lewis. And
it's like
yeah, so what it did is it turned a lot of the animal friends into like full-on characters, but what's kind of interesting is that a lot of these went on to be Fleetway characters like Porker Lewis and Johnny Lightfoot. So yeah, interesting stuff.
And
Joe Sushi is the walrus.
Yeah, what do you think about these characters compared to the ones that the actual show got? Because I think that guy looks like like the Porker character looks like Bebop, Rob. I forgot which ones they were, but
I think the show we got, the character designs are a lot more cohesive. I think looking at these, they all feel like they're from different cartoons outside of maybe Joe Sushi because he has those Sonic eyes, but like Johnny Lightfoot looks like he's from a completely different cartoon. He does not look like a Sonic character at all. It's weird. Like he's fully clothed. His head is completely different proportions. It is bizarre.
It looks like that. What's that? That rabbit. It's its own series, but he was featured in some of the TMNT stuff.
Oh, Usagi Yojimbo.
Yeah, that's what kind of reminds me of the rabbit character, like a mix of that and Looney Tunes or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Archie and the show were kind of the same. ABC wanted to expand to be, well, they wanted a syndicated version and they wanted one to be Saturday only. Kind of what they did with the real Ghostbusters. But if they wanted the show to be on ABC, not syndicated. So basically the president told them, and this is a quote, that if they did a syndicated version, if you guys want to do syndication, be our guest, go with God, but you won't be on our network. So that's the reason there's an Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog syndicated. Mm-hmm. And the Sonic the Hedgehog show on ABC so they could stay on ABC. But it is funny that he's like, go with God. Like, you do what you want.
Calm down, it's a cartoon, you weirdo.
Right. These CEOs are crazy sometimes.
It sounds like something in like a documentary about like men building railroads. He said, if you want this railroad, be our guest. Go with God, but you won't be in our network. Ever.
Can you imagine? It's like, okay. ABC only agreed to air a half-hour episode as a primetime special on March 1993. The episode was Heads or Tails. Before delaying the show, then picking up the full season for fall of 1993, along with Adventures. So they were airing at the same time, or same time period. Thus, to make the ABC show stand out from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, they went for a makeover of the show with a more darker and serious tone. You could check out, they have a Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog Bible. We're not going to go through it, but it's online.
Go with God and read the Bible.
Right. It's online if you guys want to see it. Its writing is very like sarcastic. You could tell it was these people you could tell that it was a small team of people. Like the writing on there, they had fun writing the Sonic Bible, at least for the show. But if you guys want to see it, it's online. It's 25 pages. It's not too bad of an outline. So let's talk about the story. Actually, what do you think about them having their own Bible from the TV show?
That makes sense. Every show has a Bible. Looking through it, it's really weirdly written, though. It's like a 30-year-old trying to write for kids.
Right.
But if you ever saw if you ever saw the leaked emails when they were talking about Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, remember that? And they're like, he dabs and he humble brags. And it's oh my God, stop it. And they're like, he makes Snapchats and TikToks.
Do you think at this time, SEGA of America was basically allowing these people to do what they want? I'm assuming that the Archie writers and the cartoons kind of work together to promote the show. They would assume that they would be promoted together in a way.
I'd have to imagine the Archie comics people just kind of received the Bible and like character designs and some scripts, and then they saw an episode or something and went from there. Because there wasn't... I mean, to be honest, the Archie comics were kind of like if the Saturday morning show was written by Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog people. Because they were a lot lighter, there was a lot more jokes, and Scratch and Grounder were in it. So it was actually... The comic was a really good, at least for kids, kind of like transition. Because you could see the transition... You could see the Saturday morning characters, but it would have the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Robotnik, and Badniks. And so you'd have to imagine, he just changed his outfit at one point and took over,
right.
And became more serious. Yeah.
So let's talk about the story. So right away, the series takes place on Mobius, a planet populated with anthropomorphic animals. So right away, what do you think about Mobius and a lot of people wanting the Sonic series to go back to Mobius? Is that something that is it still canon in the video games? Like, I know there's a lot of people that...
I mean, if you're going through by the Western canon up until like 96, 97, then yeah, 100%. It was its own thing. And it totally existed in the cartoons. It totally existed in the comics. But yeah, obviously it was kind of like worked its way into the video games, but never really was present outside of the manuals. I think the most recently, and I interviewed him, the writer of the Sonic novelizations for the movies. He told us that early drafts had, or actually not early drafts, like the novels said Sonic was from Mobius. And then the movie kind of trimmed that out, probably because it would confuse audiences. And they were like, you don't need to give this planet a name. But
I agree with that.
It's interesting. Yeah.
The Kingdom of Acorn, based within the metropolitan city of Mobotropolis, is that correct? Was at war with an unseen enemy. King Acorn recruited the human scientist named Julian to build war machines to end the war with a victory. However, during peacetime, Julian and his nephew Snively launched a coup d'etat against the kingdom. The king is banished to another dimension called the Void, and most of the citizens are captured and permanently transformed into robot slaves. Which I've said before in other episodes, I hate the whole like slavery thing that they just like throw in these things. But through a machine called the Robotizer, Julian renames himself Dr. Robotnik, obviously because it sounds cool. And now the dictator of Mobotropolis is renamed Robotropolis, and polluted industrial cityscape. So, this is definitely something that when you played Sonic the Hedgehog, the video game, it has some stuff that goes with Sonic the Hedgehog, like the fact that these animals become robots or are turned to robots. That's in the video game. It's obviously every time you rescue the stage in the end, you transform these creatures back, right?
Right.
But what do you think about this other stuff where they added a kingdom? I know that STI, when we did the canceled games, they really wanted to bring this aspect of a kingdom that was taken over by Eggman to the video game world.
I think it's interesting that he was Julian Kintobor, and then he changed his name to Dr. Ivo Robotnik when he went in charge, whereas now in the Sonic movie, it's Dr. Ivo Robotnik, and in the video games too. And then he took on the name Eggman. So it's like, and that makes a lot more sense to me. I find it weird when you're like, I'm Julian Kintobor, and then you change your name. Like, why would he change his name? Julian Kintobor is just a fine name. Whatever.
It's like, I think he wanted to start like a YouTube channel, and he's like, Dr. Robotnik will be my name. Or maybe I don't know. It sounds cool. Like, and he made everybody into robots, so he's like, Robotnik makes sense.
But he did have a tiny mustache early on, which is interesting because it again, going back to the Sonic movie, like lifts a lot from the Saturday Morning in terms of like he was a guy with a little mustache and then he grew a big mustache and changed his name. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Robotnik finds himself at odds with a small collective group called the Freedom Fighters, who operate out of a hidden woodland village of Knothole. They are led by Sonic the Hedgehog and Princess Allie Acorn, King Acorn's sole heir. Other members include Sonic's best friends Miles, Tails, Prower, a computer genius, Rotor the Walrus, the French coyote, Antoine how do you say his last name?
Well, it's Antoine Depardieu, but then in the comics, it was Antoine Decollette. So I guess they changed it.
I don't know why it was here, because when I did the notes for the characters right now we're going to talk about, it was different. So we'll talk about the characters anyway. So yes, Sonic uses power rings to gain temporary boost in power. Both rings and Robotizer are designed by Sonic's uncle Chuck, one of the victims of the machine. Okay, what do you think? We'll talk about Chuck in a little bit, but what do you think about the power rings, which is another thing that they added in the movie, right? That Sonic uses the rings as a power. I guess he does in the video games too. He turns into Super Sonic with it, right?
Yeah, well, it's the I guess, yeah, and there's no emeralds in the Saturday morning cartoons. It's the rings, and there's a whole lore behind the rings, and I think a lot of people really like that element to this. I personally like that the rings come from some unknown other dimension, and there's something otherworldly about them, which is kind of like what Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog does, because they only appear, I think, when they go through like a special warp zone. They don't appear that much in the show, and they appear blue, I think.
Right.
But still, like, they're this mysterious thing. Here, there's still some mystery to them, but they're very rare. They're not all over the place, and they appear in a lake. I don't know. It's weird.
I guess in the video games, he uses supersonic is done by the emeralds, but
Right.
when he is supersonic, he needs the rings to power himself as Sonic, right?
Yeah, well, they basically give him boost before
Right.
boost was a thing. That's what it is. And if you think about it, once they introduced boosting, boost meters were filled up by collecting rings. So you could argue that this was the first time Sonic boosted was the Saturday morning cartoon, which is weird.
This is the origins of Sonic Rush, really, and the boost gameplay. Nice.
Right.
So let's talk about the characters that make this show, and maybe talk about how different they are from what the characters have been in the past. So the first character is Sonic the Hedgehog, which is the first voice actor to ever voice Sonic the Hedgehog, Jaleel White, who played a small character called... What was his name again? The Family Matters?
Stefan Urkel.
Urkel, yes. So he voiced Sonic. I thought he did a pretty good job as the first voice of Sonic, not having anything else to base himself off of. I think a lot of voice actors kind of did their own version of his, well, I'm cool voice.
Jaleel introduced a very nasally kind of voice for Sonic, almost like it sounded like his nose was plugged. And that carried on to the OVA with the English voice actor for that, who went to the extreme. Tails, what are you doing? It was clear he was kind of channeling Jaleel White, and you would even hear that in. After that, they kind of were just like guys doing heroic voices. I don't think they went that nasally until we got again the movie Sonic, but I think that's just because the voice actor for the movies just has a naturally nasally voice. I don't think Roger ever really sounded nasally. I don't think
not nasally,
Griffith
for sure.
or any other guys. But yeah, he definitely introduced. And I always thought of it because Sonic has a tiny nose, so when he talks, he kind of talks like,
I think personally is because they wanted him to sound a little bit like Steve Urkel in a way, and he's could never live that character down.
And he can't avoid that because that's kind of his voice. I mean, I've heard him speak normally, but he still has a little bit of to him.
So in this game, in this TV show, Sonic is a 15-year-old person and protagonist of the series. He is courageous and cunning hedgehog, possessing a defiant attitude, which is basically how we know Sonic. And he is able to run at supersonic speeds. And a capable fighter, he is selfless and blah blah. It's kind of like an anime hero. He misses his uncle Sir Charles, who was roboticized. He's the only one to use the power rings, and usually to increase his speed. In season 1, he was more intelligent, with a natural flair for cunning plans. In season 2, he's kind of more foolish and more embellished in that way. What do you think about the change from the character of a hero that has plans to a hot, I guess, going straight to the problem that I guess that's something we all know Sonic for. I don't think anybody says, you know what, Sonic the Hedgehog has the best plans, right? in the video game series, he just runs towards adventure, I guess, right?
Yeah, he kind of makes it up as he goes, but he's such a quick thinker that, it usually works out for him. Whereas in Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, he's always has disguises, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. We also have... Okay, so Tails, which... Honestly, what do you think about this redesign? Because there's no Tails that looks like this. I really like the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Tails, the more animated, yellowish. This one has a brown fox fur. He does have the 2 tails, but the design is totally different from the video game one.
Is this from Saturday Morning or Adventures? It looks like
I think
Adventures.
It might be from Adventures because I googled adventure. I googled Saturday Morning ABC show and they gave me this one, but it's hard to find sometimes the Saturday Morning. So I might be
there. You might actually. Well, it's kind of hard because sometimes they do look very similar. But they all are kind of based off the same model sheet. But he's got this, like... It's hard to explain, but like a line from his nose down to his mouth. You know what I mean? Like the way they drew him, where they...
Oh, I think you might be right. I'm looking at this like character sheet for him, and it's a little bit different. I think that might be the Adventures. You're right.
But they did do this like weird, like his middle part of his nose is kind of pointy if you were to look at him in 3 dimensions, whereas the Sonic 2 design, which is great, it's just this little tiny nose in the middle. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of his look. He looks like a teddy bear.
Right.
I don't know.
So in this one, he is a 10-year-old younger brother figure to Sonic, who he idolizes. Sonic is the youngest freedom fighter. I would hope so at 10 years old. He is often left behind in Nahol Village during missions, and he is incredibly bright, which has always been his character trait. Also, if Season 3 were to be produced, he would have matured and played a larger role as an official member of the Freedom Fighter team, and showing a little bit of his rebellious side, which I think it's cool that they were planning to have some growth in the characters if they continued on as a show. Tails, did you always think of Tails as the genius when you played 2? Because there was no characterization for him to being smart, right?
No, I just thought he was like a pilot. He was good at flying because of his 2 tails, so naturally he could fly Sonic's plane.
Right, and he flew as a character.
I also kind of presumed that it was his plane, but he put Sonic on it because he was like a fan of Sonic.
Yeah.
Because I never really thought of Sonic as owning a plane, nor do you really see Sonic flying it. But I guess that's where the mechanic thing kind of works into it. And you don't really get that characterization until Sonic Adventure. Because prior to that, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, like you never see his workshop or wrenches in his hands or inventions. But now it's all about the tablet. He always has that tablet with the big antenna coming out of the top. So, yeah.
Brand new technology right there.
Yeah, right, his iPad.
Sally, Princess Sally Acorn, I think this is probably the most popular original character from the show. Sally is a 15-year-old princess from Planet Mobius and Sonic's love interest. She's the strategist and leader of the Knothole Freedom Fighters. So what do you think about Sally's design, the idea of her being a love interest? This is before, I don't know, it wasn't before Amy, because Amy was in Sonic CD, and I think it predates this by like a year.
Right. Amy was, during the production of this show, if I remember correctly, like they had Sally being pink at one point, and they even called Amy Princess Sally in the Sonic CD manual.
Oh.
So there was this like period of time where I think they were trying to see if they could maybe in Japan, obviously it was Amy Rose, but over here they were like, we're working on this cartoon with Princess Sally, but there's a new female in the CD game. Well, let's just be sloppy and call her Princess Sally and then make our Princess Sally pink. And then kids will be like, oh yeah, it's Princess Sally from Sonic CD, even though it looks completely different. And you might think, oh, that's lazy, but remember, this is like a franchise where Robotnik looks like 3 different guys within the same year. Like, you can play a video game and watch a TV show and read a comic, and the character design's completely different. And his name's completely different, so...
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, Sally, she's a very important character to the franchise. I've said before that she's had a longer lifespan than she... I don't want to say she deserved, but than most other, I guess, kind of cult favorites ever get. Like, this is a character who just was in a short-lived cartoon series, and yet she continued on for, like, over 20 years in a comic book that rebooted and still kept her and redesigned her. Like, Princess Sally was still relevant last decade, or in the last like 6 years, right?
Right. She even got like a
which is
3D model in the rebooted Archie when they did all the 3D models for the characters for the covers. She got one, I remember.
That's, I mean, so, we should, I know right now people are like, oh, they need to bring the Freedom Fighters into IDW. And Ian Flynn has said they could, because he says they did appear in Spinball, which does appear in the menus for Sonic Origins. So there is a loophole there. I think he wants to take advantage of it eventually, but let's be honest, like Sally, she got a lot for a character in a short-lived cartoon series. No, think of any other cartoon series of that era, and those characters are not continuing on to today, unless it's like Ninja Turtles.
Especially the next ones we'll talk about after Sally Acorn. They kind of just died out, Maybe a couple of them, like Antoine
Decollete. Yeah.
So in season 1, she's more competitive towards Sonic and self-righteous. But in season 2, they kind of made her more mellow and content, and usually place the straight man in the show. So what's your thoughts on changing her dynamic with Sonic from like, I'm better than you, I could do this better than you, Sonic, to basically being like, oh no, Sonic's doing something dumb again and playing the straight person?
Yeah, in season 2, she kind of became Sleepy Sally. Like, she just lost a lot of her spunk, and she was just kind of like she was kind of like Mon Mothma, from Star Wars, where she was just kind of like the level-headed leader who would sometimes go along with the plan, other times be like, this is a bad idea, Sonic, which kind of stripped her of some of her fun. I mean, if I'm playing series producer, I would have made her Amy Rose, and still have her be a princess, but have her be the Amy Rose design, just to make things a little more cohesive between the comics and cartoons and games. Right. But,
I will say that it is a breath of fresh air to add her as a different character in the video game world, just because there's so little female Sonic friends. Like, if we remember Forces, like, it was like Knuckles, Vector, Charmy.
Yeah, it was Rouge, but I don't think Cream was in it. So yeah, it was just Rouge and Amy.
Right.
And nowadays, I think the IDW series has, I mean, don't cancel me, I think it has too many female characters.
And none of them have like gone outside of that. Like,
they IDW. Will. They did actually. He name drops some of them in Frontiers, and what I mean is there's too many. Is that I feel like sometimes I'm reading the comic and like Sonic's like a side character in his own series, and I'm like, I'd really like to just have a Sonic starring story, or like multi-issue arc. The fact that I have to read a spin-off comic to get a big Sonic adventure, whereas like the main series is still talking about Whisper and Tangle and like 12 other new characters, is like,
and I think that's an issue too with the Sonic series, right? Where there's already been so many characters created in the last 25 years plus 30 years, and then now you have to add new characters because they screwed up 25 years ago where they never made female characters. So you're trying to introduce new type of characters, and now you're like, oh, but they have to have their story fleshed out. Like these other characters have been around for 20 years, but yeah. I haven't read the comic too much, so I can't have an opinion on that. So let's talk about the next character from Team Freedom, Antoine Decollete. This character is a clumsily, cowardice, pompous coyote who speaks in a French accent and uses French mannerisms. And lately, this show has been getting pushback because they're saying this is a negative French stereotype, especially him being a coward and, stereotypes by Americans. Personally, I think the history of France, they were pretty brave. They got in a lot of wars. Too brave, where they actually conquered a lot of land in a very negative way. But he often has trouble speaking English. He also has a crush on Sally, who he is the rival of Sonic. And they also make fun of him for his shortcomings. He's clumsiness. Gets the freedom fighters into trouble. In the first season, he is portrayed as being intelligent, if not arrogant and fearful. But in the second season, he is more clumsy and like a coward, and it's become more exaggerated. This is another character where like they could have used Knuckles as his rival and kind of dropped this whole French idea, especially since we're in a totally different planet called Mobius, and I feel like Knuckles already had Angel Island and lore with the, he has his own lore and his people are gone missing. His story is already more interesting than a French character that wants to sniff Sally's butt or whatever he wants to do. I don't know. He's a coyote. I don't know what coyotes do. So what's your opinion on this character? And do you think, because he's also in the newer comics, right? Like they all carry on. Right.
I thought Antoine was fine. I thought he was an okay rival to Sonic, but once Knuckles came around, like, Antoine was old news. Like,
right.
Yeah, I think he was kind of disposable after that. I just did not find him all that interesting, and then he became like a rival for Sally's affection, and in the comics he was a little bit more of a rival than in the cartoons. But again, like, I don't watch Sonic cartoons or read Sonic comics to see who he's going to fall in love with.
Yeah.
I've said before that I have like zero interest in like true romance or even characters like consummating their love and like having babies. I think it's I get how some people want that in their storytelling, and you can get that in some other franchises, but not Sonic. Like, come on, they're cartoon characters. I'm just not into that. I think it's weird.
I think so too. I think the idea of like, like the Amy, I don't even think. Actually, I kind of hate the idea of Amy just chasing Sonic around for love. I think that's stupid too. To be honest,
but like,
with
where's this gonna go? Like, if I'm watching this cartoon as a kid, like, I know Sonic's not gonna get married. I know they're not gonna have babies on the show. So what's the point? Like, it's not like I'm watching. I don't know. Like, what's another show? Like The X-Files. Like, that's a show where I know full well that Mulder and Scully could sleep with each other and could have a child together, and they eventually did, and there's a payoff to that. Whereas with Sonic, obviously Sonic and Sally are not going to have kids. They did in the comics, and in like a 30 years later thing, and it was weird and no one liked it. At least I didn't like it.
I didn't. I'm sure there's some people on the internet that liked it, but no.
Ken Penders liked it.
Oh, he's a big fan. The next character is a psychotic bunny Rabot.
A cyborg, bunny, not psychotic.
Look at her face, dude. Like,
okay.
She looks at you like that. I mean, Bunny is a friendly cyborg rabbit with a southern accent. Bunny was briefly captured and had half her body roboticized. I hate that word. Before she was saved in mid-transformation, these robotic features, additional to her martial arts skill, make her the brawn of the freedom fighters. Despite these advantages, she wants to be normal. So she kind of has like a cyborg from GLA storyline where she wants to be back to what she used to be, but her roboticization is what gives her powers and obviously her martial arts, right? This is back when martial arts were like the bee's knees. Everyone wanted to be a kickboxer. What do you think about this character?
I think Bunny Rabot is probably the best original character from the series because I could totally see her in a video game. I could see her having like Rystar or Werehog kind of skills where she could stretch out her arm and leg. I think the name is, just like with Sonic the Hedgehog, like it's kind of a play on, I don't know, it's kind of punny, with Bunny Rabot. Yeah, I liked her. I liked her voice. Her voice was from the woman who did the voice of Chucky Finster on Rugrats.
Oh.
And I remember she passed away in like 2014, and I remember at the time it was kind of like they never said what it was, but I believe she actually had a like blood condition that was very painful, and I think she committed suicide. So it's kind of sad. But
that is sad.
If you look her up, like, you'd recognize her face. She kind of looks like that other actress with kind of a squinty face. But yeah, it's tragic. I think she was probably the best voice actor on the show outside of Rob Paulsen, and also one of the best characters in terms of just feeling truly Sonic-y. Like, you know, if any of these came back in IDW, I'd actually want Bunny.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that her look design, it kind of reminds me of an 80s yoga girl. You know, those what she's wearing. It reminds, you know, in the 80s it had the like the
workout. Yeah,
the workout video.
Big, but yeah.
Yeah, whatever that is. You know, the workout tapes. I guess that would be what I was going for. But yeah, the next one is Rotor Walrus. This guy is actually still back in comics. Rotor is a walrus who is a mechanic of the Freedom Fighters, which is kind of weird because that's Tails' job, technically.
Yeah.
He invents reliable gadgets for the Freedom Fighters in Knothole and on their missions. In Season 1, he accompanies the other Freedom Fighters on many missions. In the second season, he is completely redesigned and even had to replace voice actor and stays behind to work instead of going on missions. I would say this character is definitely like the lower end. I like the idea of a walrus because it's like unique, but he's literally just taking Tails' job.
Yeah, kind of a weak character. He also went by the name Boomer, I think. That was like, again, in the Archie comics, they had early, like, they were working from early drafts, so that was one of his early names. So it's kind of funny that Boomer, like, okay, Boomer.
Right.
I thought he was a kind of a lame character. His voice didn't really fit his character. It was just kind of weird. He just sounded like some random dude. I actually really like his redesign later on with Archie Sonic number 252 when they did the...
Isn't he like purple?
He's still purple, but they did kind of like what they did with Eggman and Sonic Boom, where they switched his body around so he had a bigger chest and he looked like he was strong, whereas in this he's got like this like little tiny walrus feet.
I found it.
Also,
yeah, he's more purple and he looks more like a Sonic Adventure redesign in a way, and he has like this sling pack. Yeah.
What's also interesting is that late in the run they actually aged him before they did the reboot. So he was actually one of the few Sonic characters to really age. Like he looked older. He wore a mechanic's jacket or like a flight jacket. He looked like an old man. And even stranger, Ken Penders and maybe even Ian Flynn were intent on making him homosexual. So
what? Both together? They were like, come on.
Well, I don't know if Ian Flynn continued it on, but I know Ken Penders like had him in a relationship with one of Knuckles' relatives. So like one of the old Echidna guys was like in a relationship with Rotor, which again, I always find it so strange when these Sonic comics like dip into super real world stuff like that. Like to me, they're just like funny cartoon characters, but they're like, no, he was a closeted man who later came out and married Knuckles' uncle or something. You're like, wow,
yeah.
all right.
I'm mixed on it just because Sonic is portrayed as a, like, I don't know, I guess he never really has a love interest technically in the comics, but other characters have an interest in him, at least for what we know.
Right, for me it's like if you started going, oh yeah, well Mickey used to date Daisy, and then like Daisy had cancer.
That's
and you're
why.
Like,
well,
wait, what?
He has Minnie Mouse, I guess technically, right? But
but they're just they're forever boyfriend girlfriend, and then maybe they get married when it's like on the top of, like, I don't know, like they.
That's like what I'm saying. Like we're introducing the fact that there's a straight relation. That's what just my thing, right? There's already, like, I'd rather not have any type of relationship like that in kid shows.
Right. Yeah.
If I had to prefer it, but like, since they already have the straight relationship, I guess I won't give them too much. But I just don't want it to be like a pervasive thing.
I just think that's kind of, you look at where this show went with Rotor, and it's just he's went on such an adventure, such a journey.
I would agree with that. I think they just didn't know what to do with him since he's just a replacement for Tails, and they were like, let's give him this. But I thought it was interesting that you said that both Ian Flynn and
I'm pretty sure
Ken Penders doesn't seem like the type of guy to do that.
But I know, well, Ken Penders definitely did. I know Ian Flynn did introduce a gay couple in the IDW comics, because it was the guy who does the radio station, like a DJ, and then like a guy who works with him, like they're a couple. But and I think even Whisper and Tangle are too.
Are they? I didn't know that.
But I don't know. Like I think the way they handle it in IDW is very different from how Ken Penders handles it, where he gets very weird. Like he's like, Antoine always had an interest. No, that skunk guy. Remember that? Mm-hmm. He like says like he had an interest in Sally even before she was like of age, and it's like, all right, no.
Yeah,
we're not
Ken
going
Penders
there.
Is a strange dude. He's a strange guy. So,
and he drew the art for the DVD.
Oh, I didn't know that. He did a good job because his art somehow got worse. I don't understand. Like his new art that
Sonic's
he posts.
head is like an oval for some reason. I don't know why.
Right, it's not perfect, but it's better than what he's been posting on Twitter. I'll just say that.
That's true.
The next character is Nicole, which is a highly advanced, artificially intelligent, portable personal computer. Wow, they predicted the cell phone. Sally uses it to analyze and hack into Robotnik's machines. They made her into an actual... I don't know. The show never had her as an actual character, just a computer AI, from what I remember.
Yeah.
And I know in the comic book, she actually has a actual character. Like, they manifested her into a character.
Yeah, she looks like a lynx, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Which is that like a joke because the Atari Lynx is a handheld?
I hope so.
I hope that's a deep cut reference to Atari's handheld. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, the HoloLinks they call her, right? Let me see. I have a picture of her. So she looks very much like what you would think of a background character or anything in Sonic's world. So she fits well, but in the show she's just a computer. While genuinely a formal computer in the episode of Supersonic, she just kind of like mundane. But in the episode Supersonic, she copies Sonic's lingo and kind of amuses Sally. That's kind of like the only change she has. Comments by Sonic indicate that Sally received Nicole from her father, who programmed her with a great deal of information, some of which is barred from access until Sally comes of age. I wonder what kind of info he put a parent block on it, basically. So I don't know why they had to put that in the show, but maybe it's just a tease that there's more information as the show goes on, most likely. The next character is Sir Dr. Charles Hedgehog, also known as Uncle Chuck. He is an elderly inventor as well as Sonic's warm-hearted uncle. He's the one that invented the roboticizer to allow people to live longer, but had an unintended effect of robbing an individual of their free will. Which it reminds me of Elon Musk Neuralink that he's working on. I'm like, he's Uncle Chuck, only that I don't know if he's going to be warm-hearted. What do you think about the idea of Sonic having an uncle called Uncle Chuck, and the fact that he's the reason that he's like a genius for some reason? Like Sonic is not a genius. He's the one that invented this machine that Eggman just took. So Dr. Eggman or Dr. Robotnik isn't smart himself, I guess. What do you think about that aspect of the story?
It's interesting. They're trying to clearly tie Sonic to like Robotnik's origins, almost to the point where they're like childhood friends in some adaptations, where they say like they grew up together and Chuck took care of both of them, and then there's like this whole story with like a tractor crash, and it's very strange. But Yeah, I thought Chuck was all right. I liked the very early comics before he became a robot. And I also remember when when Archie rebooted, he was still around, but he was just like a guy who Sonic knew, but he wasn't related to Sonic, because I think one of the things Sega said was you can't make family members for Sonic.
Which I kind of like the idea, because I think now it's kind of like you said on the internet, who's Cream's mom? Remember?
Right.
Yeah, like now a character has a mom, so you're always thinking, where's Amy's mom?
Where's Sonic's mom? And also he had a dog too named Mutsky, and then when they rebooted again in Archie with 252, Mutsky became like he could walk around and talk, which makes sense because there aren't like Sonic doesn't own a pet fox,
right?
You know, why would he have a pet dog? Can't the dog talk too? Weird.
So Robotnik later stole his invention and used it on him, turning him into a mindless drone, and made him destroy his own restaurant called Uncle Chuck's Chili Dogs, which is this the earliest or one of the earliest reference to Sonic liking chili dogs?
You know, you'd have to ask the guy doing all that Sonic SatAM history stuff on Twitter, because I think he did like a deep dive, and he found that like, yeah, in one of the Bibles for this show, I think that's where it kind of originated.
Definitely need to make a long form video of the history of Sonic's chili dogs. Anyway,
oh yeah.
With a great difficulty, he regains control of his body and acts as a spy for the Freedom Fighters. So that's kind of his story. Personally, I hate Uncle Chuck. I think they should just cancel the whole idea of Sonic having family members. I think it's too weird. He doesn't have to be tied to Robotnik. He could be his own being. I like Robotnik and having his grandfather in Sonic Adventure 2. I thought it was cool. I think we did an episode of Sonic Adventure 2 where we talked about how that video game is really just a Eggman video game, to be honest with you, because he has the most interesting story in that game. The next character is King Acorn, who is voiced by Tim Curry. Is that true? It says it right here.
I guess so. Yeah.
Is it the same Tim Curry that I'm thinking?
It has to be, right?
Right, the British actor, right? The guy that played It.
I don't think... Well, he also did a lot of... he's still alive, but he had, I believe he had a stroke. But yeah, he did a lot of cartoon voice acting. He was Palpatine for a while, for a short while, on the Clone Wars. After that voice actor passed away, he replaced him.
So King Acorn is the rightful king of Mobius and the father of Princess Sally. He is dethroned because, Dr. Robotnik, as we went for the Great War. What do you think about his... I don't think his character was in the show that much at all, right?
No, he was kind of like the Sonic's mom in Queen Alina in Sonic Boom, or Sonic Underground. You know what I mean? Where he like had a presence, and they always talked about him, but he was only in it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last one is my least favorite character, Dulcie the Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Clumsy, loudmouth young dragon who joined the Freedom Fighters in the second season. She is often flies the Freedom Fighters to their destinations, which, again, they have a plane. Sonic has a plane. It's been established. So she also has powerful lungs, which can blow enemies away or freeze them. If they had another third season, they would show her full powers. I think this is a character that's been basically canceled. I mean, like, she's not in the comics anymore, right? She's not part of the Freedom Fighters in the new iterations, correct?
No, I think she did appear in the reboot, but yeah, she hasn't really carried on. She was weird. Like, the fact that she was, like, completely... Like, when I think of if they were introducing, like, dragons into Sonic, I'd think they'd have the same body proportions. But she's, like, massive. It's very strange.
And she kind of looks like she's from another TV show, and they just plopped her into this world. Because one thing that I've noticed about the Sonic world, it's animals based in our real world, but made anamorphic. So the fact that we have a dragon that doesn't exist, it's a fantasy character, and all of a sudden is in this world is kind of weird, and it's so that's
yes, she was redesigned. She's still taller, but she's got like more Sonic kind of proportions. It's like if there was a basketball player in Sonic's universe, like a female basketball player. She's like twice his height.
Oh God. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that character, so that's one that we could leave. So the next character, these are the villains we're going to be looking at. So first one is Robotnik, a man that conquered Metropolis 10 years earlier. We talked about that in the storyline. His goals is to defeat Sonic the Hedgehog, his sworn nemesis. His hatred for the Hedgehog has turned him into a desperate obsession to capture and roboticize him, which is often his undoing. He is later defeated in the Doomsday Project episode, which is he actually has an arc and it actually ends, which is interesting considering that in the video games he's always back, right? He's a recurring character.
Right.
In Season 1, Robotnik is portrayed as a fearsome dictator, and he had a deep echo in his voice. In Season 2, he's more lighthearted than Season 1. Robotnik was later depicted as more of a buffoonish villain rather than a fierce and intimidating foe. And they don't have the echo in his voice anymore, but he does look pretty fearsome with his eyes, I would say. But you had a hot take saying that he is not fearsome. He's actually a soft boy. Is that true?
I said he was boring. And
Okay.
I mean boring by that he's just very one note. Like, he feels like an 80s cartoon villain where he's just like, I'm evil, and I'm evil because I want to do evil things, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, I think of Shredder from the 80s Ninja Turtles cartoons, and he, from the beginning, was kind of just like that. But then they softened him up and had him doing funny things, and it actually made him more likable. Because he's like, he's whining. Like, he'll whine sometimes. Like, oh, come on! You're like, I like this guy.
And I recently watched the first movie, and I'm like, bro, this guy's like a parent's worst nightmare. He's like recruiting kids to do his crime in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think also this one was going up against, you know, the great Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog Robotnik, who's just like fantastic. Like, he's just such a fun character. He could have his show of his own, and I would not miss Sonic at all. But this one, I just found him boring. And I know people were like jumping on me when I said that. They're like, "Oh, but he's evil," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why he's boring. He's just like one note evil. Like, what? I don't really hear people in the Sonic community like praising this Robotnik. It's always first and foremost the modern game Robotnik, you know, and then Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and then maybe Sonic Boom Robotnik, who's pretty much modern game Robotnik. You know, it's the same voice actor.
What do you think about his redesign here? Like, with the red eyes and black, it kind of became a staple. I remember back in the day where like his design, while he's fat and he has the mustache, is kind of different from the shape and I guess aesthetic that they gave out in the movie, because in the video game he kind of has like a more playful look to him. He's like smiling, especially in the Japanese manual. In the American one, they kind of gave him this more mean look. But in the Japanese version, he's more like playful. It kind of feels like a little bit.
Yeah, I thought his design was fine. I think the eyes are a thing too that we had with with the Adventures. So that's something they carried over. But the big shoulder pads, I have to remind myself. In Adventures, they were just kind of like a little balls, whereas here they're like big, swooping. They're very strange. But yeah, it's just like he's holding his chicken all the time and just being evil. He's like Dr. Claw. That's basically what he is. And Dr. Claw's boring.
The next know? And this show had more villains than just Eggman, and I think they wanted to introduce more. But Sniffly is his
yeah.
underling and assistant, as well as his nephew. He's constantly abused, teased, and intimidated by his uncle, which I think is the character that they did in in the movie, the Paramount movie, because what's that character's name?
Agent Stone.
Agent Stone basically plays this type of character where he's abused by Robotnik in the movie, and he's like in love with him though, instead of this guy that's like undermining him, I guess. Depends on the season. So in season 1, Sniffly appeared to be loyal to Robotnik. In season 2, he's showing to despise him, talk about him, and make plans behind his back. Blast to the past episode revealed that he once had a head full of hair, which he was very proud of, only to lose most of it to a time-traveling Sonic, which I don't understand why, like, bald characters always have like a narc where they're like, actually, I used to have beautiful hair. I always think that's weird and kind of cheesy, but his intelligence easily rivals Robotnik's, which Uncle Chuck is the one that made the invention, but whatever. After Robotnik is defeated in Doomsday Project, he himself makes plans to take over Robotropolis. What do you think about this character? Because I think they were trying to go with, like, he needed a sidekick, like Sonic has Tails. Eggman's big, he's fat. We need someone that's small and appears to be weak. What do you think?
I mean, Snively, he's not the strongest in terms of, like, toadies for Robotnik, but he, kind of set a trend because the chicken was kind of, just was like a pet. But, we had Scratch, Grounder, and Coconuts, which were, they were the sidekicks, or his sidekicks. But then I think Snively kind of brought it to another level. Someone who was like a human peer to Robotnik. And again, you brought up the Paramount movies. Like, Agent Stone is the closest thing we've had to a Snively. But between then, we've had Orbot and Cubot. We've had Slate and Dingo from Underground. We've had those two robots. I always forget their names in Sonic X. So he's part of a very important history of Robotnik always having some sort of sidekick and them always being different between different canons. So, I thought he was fine. I think he's actually better in the comics, especially when they redesigned him and he had like his own little Robotnik outfit. I thought that was kind of fun. He had like a Sonic Adventure styled outfit, but it was green instead of red.
Oh, I
thought that was cool. Yeah, he had the little yellow buckles. So, yeah.
I have to pull it up. The next one is I see it right here. Okay, he has kind of like a little like coat thing.
Oh, I guess he didn't have the buckles, but he did have the little stripes. Yeah, I think he looks kind of cool.
The next character is Nagus. He's a powerful sorcerer of an unknown species. Another character that seems like it's from like the Gargoyles show, and not really a Sonic character. Formerly Robotnik's mentor, he hates Robotnik for betraying and imprisoning him within the Void during the Great War. He wants nothing more than to see Robotnik suffer, but cannot exist outside of the Void for any extended amount of time. He was scheduled to reappear as one of the main villains in Season 3 along Snively before it was canceled. What do you think about this? Like, I think it's weird that we have like these like human characters, but like then we got this thing that looks like a gargoyle troll demon thing.
Yeah, I always found Nagus to be weird because he kind of felt like a half-baked idea that never really got, expanded on properly, and so he would reappear in the comics and then kind of went his own direction there. So, yeah, I don't know. I've never really been a huge fan of Ixis Nagus. And there's been other odd characters to stem from him in the comics, but like, what is he? Like, I don't know. he's like a rhino bat lobster, which is like what?
Right.
So
definitely
weird
not
character.
Definitely not something that we need back, in my opinion. But the last one is just the SWAT bots, which are what you think they are, right? They're like basically gun. No, not really gun, but yeah, I guess kind of. They're robotic defense military units, right?
Yeah, they're kind of like. Well, you know what they're kind of like? They're kind of like the gun, or not the gun. Yeah, the gun robots in Sonic Adventure 2, right? And then we also had in Sonic 06, his like robots, and then most famously the egg pawns, which are now like all over the place. You always see egg pawns. But yeah, you know, they were kind of his first robotic army that we've ever had, because I don't know, the series did have animal robots, I think, but the SWAT bots were really the primary ones you had, which I always thought was kind of boring. Like, I prefer Scratch, Grounder, Coconuts, you know, and we do get that chicken that he's carrying around, and I guess we do see some other badniks, but I think the series would have been more exciting if we had a whole army of, like, badniks rather than just SWAT bots. But I think animation-wise, it's easier.
Right, because you have to design every character, and yeah.
Right.
So, let's talk about the best episodes according to IMDb. The series has over 5,400 reviews on the website, and it's gotten its rating at a 6.8 out of 10. We'll look at the top 5 rated episodes, but do you think 6.8 out of 10 is pretty good for this show?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know if IMDb ratings are more like IGN ratings, where anything under 7 is like a terrible thing. Right. But I guess 6.8 is close to 7 for a series that took a while to find its footing, and then when it hit season 2, it kind of stripped it of some of the good stuff, and then it never got a proper conclusion. I'd say that's a decent rating. I would give this show a 7 out of 10, and okay. I like the show, but I don't love it.
So the number one is this number? Did I skip one? Let me see. 1, 2.
No, you got it.
Okay, I do have it. Okay, I was just looking at it.
It makes sense that this would be number 1.
The Doomsday Project. When Robotnik activates the Doomsday Machine, the Freedom Fighters from every zone of Mobius team up to destroy it, leading to his cinematic showdown with Robotnik. This aired on December 3rd, 1994. It has a rating of 8.3 out of 10. Would you agree with this as being the top tier episode from season 2?
I think it's because it's like the epic finale, right? So that's why a lot of people remember it. I think they love this one because it gives them a hint of what season 3 would have been. And, you know, you think of most TV shows and the finale is always like hotly anticipated, and it's either the best ever or the worst ever. You know, like for every Sopranos, there's like a X-Files finale, which people hated the X-Files finale, but they loved the Sopranos finale.
Did they love it, though? I heard people, like, mix. I think what makes it so good is that some people that don't think deeply or didn't pay attention to the show hated it.
Oh, yeah, no. I feel like casual losers hated the Sopranos finale because they just watched the show for violence and sex and not, like, the higher thinking. But
they wanted it to be Tony, like, shooting everyone and becoming king of the world, right? Like, it's because, like,
right.
I'm not gonna get too.
But then you have shows.
But
you have shows like the X-Files and Seinfeld, where the finale is really just like a courtroom story where all characters from past episodes appear, and it's just kind of like, you know, it's nothing too exciting. But then the finale for Star Trek Next Generation was really good, and the finale for Quantum Leap was really good. So I think this one falls more in those like really good finales. I think it doesn't have payoff, but it definitely is a climactic story for a series that, you know, most other cartoons at the time would not be doing this. So
I would agree with that. I think the ending and beating Eggman would. I mean,
like, what's
video
the finale to
game-wise-
Beetlejuice? No one talks about the finale
Exactly.
to the Beetlejuice cartoon because it probably didn't have some epic confrontation with anyone. It was,
or
you know.
Beethoven, the show,
Oh my god, yeah.
which was epic. We all know. The second highest rated episode is Blast to the Past Part 1. Tired of facing defeat at the hands of the evil Dr. Robotnik, Sonic and Sally time travel to the past in an effort to stop his takeover of the planet. This one aired in 1994. It's another season 2 episode, and obviously any time traveling with old characters and Tim Curry is going to get rated highly. The third episode that was rated, this one got 7.5 out of 10, which I would say is pretty good. The other one was season 1, episode 2, so not the pilot, but the second episode. It's Sonic and Sally. Sally is captured by Robotnik and creates a clone in order to track down Knothole, the freedom fighter's home, which is kind of a dumb plot, to be honest with you. It's like, I'll make her into a robot, then she'll tell me where it's at. And it's like, why don't you just read her mind or make a machine to read her mind? But anyway, this is rated 7.2 out of 10. What's your thoughts on this episode?
Sonic and Sally.
Yeah, I forgot.
I think this was on a VHS tape, but I don't really remember that one all that much. I remember the Blast to the Past episode. I think in any episode, like dipping into the lore and like looking at the history of the characters is always one that fans are going to love.
Right.
But I have to wonder if maybe people were just like, oh, Sonic and Sally. I love Sonic and Sally. 10 out of 10. You know, maybe that's why this is getting a lot of votes.
And
I can't say for sure.
And the number 4th one is obviously the second part to Blast from to the Past, and like you said, Robotnik. It kind of gives you a lore of the TV show, which I think is why it's on here. So not surprised at all. And the 5th one is kind of funny. Ultrasonic. With the help of the robot-sized Uncle Chuck, Sonic and the others try to stop Robotnik's plan to use the giant crystal to replace his oil supply. It has a metal Uncle Chuck character, which obviously there's no figures of Uncle Chuck, and there's no figures of him as metal Uncle Chuck. But is this something that we need, do you think? Like an action figure of Uncle Chuck and then an action figure of Robo Chuck?
Sure, why not?
Would you buy it?
Let's get him out there.
Would you collect? Would you be an Uncle Chuck collector?
You'll buy it.
I would.
You'll buy it. You'll be a
of course.
Chuck collector.
I think I would. But those are the type 5 episodes. I would agree the Doomsday Project and Blast to the Past are probably some of the best, so that's fine with me. Let's look at this commercials. Sonic, I was looking online for more adverts, and surprise, behold, it's really hard to find stuff from this era for the cartoons. So you want to watch the rare ABC Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog promo spot?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
I'll press play now. It's so 90s.
Oh, these kids are awesome.
Sonic the Hedgehog, premiering this fall.
So
That was something.
this is very 90s promotion where like the kids are doing cool stuff, like they're like playing basketball, not watching TV at all during the whole promo, and like they're all overly dressed. Did you know anyone that dressed like any of the kids in this promotional video?
Oh, I did every day. That's what I did.
You dress like these.
That was me.
The girls with the little hat, and they all dressed the same. So all you and all your friends just dressed the same and hung out outside on benches.
I hope you did. That's what I did.
Well, I didn't. It's an okay promo, but it's just very 90s. This next commercial, it has really bad sound, but it's a popsicle commercial featuring the Sonic the Hedgehog, the animation. So, yeah.
Let's check it out.
It's shocking, by the way, so relax.
Oh, yeah.
But this looks like more like the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, no?
It's like, yeah, it's like Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but like doing a saw torture trap to Robotnik.
And this, I'm gonna be honest, these popsicles look mid compared to the actual ones we have now with the.
Yeah, this is definitely not English. Like, this is not American. That must be like Italian or something, right?
Right, it can't be American.
Yeah.
And then
no, I've never heard it. Yeah, I've never seen those. And
we also have this Korean shoe commercial that somehow used the animation. So let me play it from the beginning. But how good is your Korean? Good?
Oh, I'm fluent.
So the car is the shoe? This makes it seem like they sped it up. So what do you think about these shoes? Would you buy these shoes? Do you own these shoes?
It's funny how it took them over 30 years to finally release Sonic's shoes proper. Right. Because it's like, Sonic the Hedgehog, well known for his red shoes with the white stripe. Check out these white shoes with Sonic on them.
Right.
What the?
Right.
Oh man. Sure. Whatever.
What you think that Sonic collectors have these shoes? Do you think they're rare?
I don't know. Korean Sonic shoes. I've never seen them before. I'm sure someone has them, but yeah, I'm sure they're rare.
So yeah, those are the only commercials I found for the show. I thought they were interesting to see. Archie's, well, the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, like I said in the beginning, tried to tie in with the TV show, try to have some, like, I'm assuming it's early on in Sonic media, so they kind of wanted to be interchangeable for kids. We talk more about Sonic the Hedgehog Archie comics on Sega Talk episode number 72, so if you want to hear us talk about the Archie comics and Kin Penders a little bit, you should definitely check that out. Let's talk about the feature film attempt for this show. And I don't have the image on here, so I have to show the Wikipedia page. But there's like an image here of the world being destroyed, and it's Kin Penders art that we all know and love now, like the newer, where he decides to like do his own coloring or whatever. Very cool.
Yeah, he's not that good at coloring.
So in 2002, Ben Hurst attempted to pitch an animated film in order to revive the series. Hurst, he proposed the idea of it being the third season for the show. So Sega executive who was interested in the project said that he later received a call from Kin Penders, the number one head writer of the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book series by Archie, who had been alerted to the movie. And he basically talked to Sega, and Sega basically told him no. Penders would later pitch Sega his own movie based on his Archie comic called Sonic Armageddon. Not much is known about the pitch, except that the film would follow Sonic and friends, and, you know, the home planet of Mobius gets destroyed. Penders had the support of X-Men director Larry Hudson and Sega of America license manager Robert LaFleur. And he cites the opportunity. So, what do you think about Kin Penders ruining the idea of a? I think he told them these like when he called Sega, he probably said some crazy stuff, right? Like knowing Kin Penders.
Right. I'm going to guess that Ben Hurst probably had like a level-headed pitch, and then Kin Penders got involved and like derailed it.
He's I'm the writer.
Right, and it's unfortunate because I feel like nowadays this is something that totally would like. Let's say the Saturday Morning Sonic series was airing in like the late 2010s, and then like a few years pass, and then we totally would have gotten like a direct to DVD and Blu-ray finale movie, because we're getting that with Venture Brothers and so many other shows get like fans are getting their long-awaited finales in like a movie form, and it seems like, like back then it just was like a weird concept, but nowadays like it's totally a common thing. Unfortunately, so much time has passed and the Sonic franchise has moved on from all this that it would just be kind of like a fever, like a fan's fever dream to actually have Sonic Season 3 happen officially.
Right.
Having said that, I'm sure you've got more to say.
Right. So Ben Hurst did not forget Sonic the Hedgehog, the animated series. In the 2000s, he actually was very vocal online. He had a blog where he would talk about his ideas. So he wrote about Season 3 that you saw the red eyes of Nagus, the sorcerer trapped in the void at the end. At the moment of Doomsday Machine was destroyed, Nagus was able to exploit the energy and pull Robotnik into the void. Sniffly? Is that how you say it?
Snively, yeah.
Snively takes over Robotropolis. During the first 2 episodes, he battles the Freedom Fighters without Robotnik's cunning. How he finds himself in the brink of losing everything. Meanwhile, Nagus is having a delightful time torturing Robotnik while plotting his escape. He's discovered the magic which will enable him to leave the void without turning to crystal. But Robotnik has found a means to communicate with Sniffly, telling the little guy his location. When he tells him that he could, get the fuck out, basically. He tells him back to Robotnik. And then the Freedom Fighters are on the brink of taking over Robotropolis. Sniffly opens the void, releasing Robotnik and accidentally releasing Nagus and Sally's father. So I guess Tim Curry would have had a more prominent role. Now Nagus is in charge. Robotnik and his Sniffly
Sniffly.
Oh, okay, I see. And so Sniffly becomes nobody. Nagus uses the king to bait a trap to catch Sally. Robotnik plans to regain his power, and Sniffly defects to the Freedom Fighters. So I guess that's not that bad for a Season 3 idea.
The fact that by Season 3 we've already, the dynamics have completely shifted. I know with Ninja Turtles it took 10 years for a totally different villain to come about in the series and put Shredder aside. So it's kind of surprising that by Season 3 they do this big shakeup. But I think for a series that probably would have been short-lived and probably would have ended after 3, that makes sense. Another series that reminds me of is, do you remember the show Reboot?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and I remember Reboot, it kind of started out like Sonic did, where it's just kind of you have the good guys and the bad guys, you know how it all works, but then by Season 2, they completely mix things up and characters go missing and power dynamics change, and I feel like that show at least had more of a payoff because they got to do TV movies and I think at least finish the story. But yeah, I loved Reboot. So anyway,
so Ben Hurst document. So sadly, Ben Hurst never got Season 3. He died in 2010. His emails where he talked about the next, the movie and his other pitches have all been posted on Sonic Retro after he died. They kind of did it as a tribute. You could check that out. It's very in detail what he wanted to do. So if you guys want to read more about that, you could read his notes there. But it's not like his project is dead because we have Team Season, and Season has a 3 in it somewhere. C, and then 3, and then on. And this project started in 2019, and it spun out from the FUS community, Fans United for Sonic SatAM. The plot is going to be based on the outline of Ben Hurst's original notes and the group's active webcomic. The teaser was released in April 2022, featuring The Fastest Thing Alive, featuring Johnny of Crush 40. And we could check out the trailer they released, which I actually, very impressive animation. They kept very true to the original style. So we'll press play.
For sure.
We'll press play.
Eventually, they'll come to pick up the pieces my dearly departed Uncle Julian left behind. And when they do, we'll have a little surprise waiting for them.
We beat Robotnik. It was over. We won.
Don't cry, Sally.
Whoa,
Pick
two
some
chicks.
up. Yeah.
The guitar, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So, what is your
Season.
So, that's one of the most interesting things I think about in the Sonic community is how these fans spend so much time and effort of their free time to like animate. Like, this is not easy to animate. Like, obviously,
No,
the
not
show,
at all.
Like, especially when you're doing it as a fan project, it looks incredible. In like, just seeing the art style in HD is really cool because, like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the old transfers are not the greatest. I think 420p or 480p is the standard definition is all they come in, right? There is no actual HD transfers.
Right, unless they can clean it up a little bit. But yeah, that's about it.
Right. So what's your opinion on Team Season 3? I'm going to call it Season 3 because just calling it Team Season
I think it's cool. They sent me an Oreo cookie box, so I can't dislike them.
Now you have to like them, right?
Yeah. But no, I honestly, like, if you listen through this, it maybe sounds like I don't like the Saturday morning cartoon or I'm like indifferent to it. To be honest, though, for me, any media, even for things that I like, if it goes unfinished, I kind of dislike it a little. And I think it's because I don't want to get really into it when it doesn't give me payoff. I was kind of that way with... what was it? A show I really loved was Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and then it was canceled, and I was like, and then I kind of like fell out of with it, like I just
I saw you in the cinema watching the new Ahsoka episode. Don't be lying, you like it?
No, but what I'm saying is that at the time they canceled it, and the show never got a finale, so I kind of stopped rewatching it, and I stopped like thinking about it so much. But then when it got a proper final season and then a follow-up and then the Ahsoka series, like, I started to get into it again. So what I'm really excited for with this Team Season 3 is that it's going to, even if it's not official, like, it's the closest thing to an official continuation and possibly finale. And same with Shenmue also. Like, after Shenmue 2, I just kind of like stopped playing the games because I was like, well, what's the point? And it's just going to disappoint me when I complete Shenmue 2 again because we're not going to get the finale. But then 3 came out, and then I like kind of revived my fandom. So I'm hoping this kind of revives my fandom and gives me a reason to rewatch these and maybe even reread some of the Archie comics that had strong ties to the cartoons. But yeah, I think it's really cool that they're doing it.
Yeah, I think the Sonic fan community is some interesting stuff. I think the fan modding, when they go back and they made a Metal Sonic game with levels that I really liked. I'm always impressed with the Sonic community. Like they always cease to impress me. So I'm definitely looking forward to this. And everyone involved, I hope they deliver a product, because I mean animation is hard, and this only came out in 2022. I mean, they started in 2019. Considering how long animation takes, especially when you have a small team of a few people, it's a lot of work. So and they always keep on posting updates, so I'm very interested to finally see the product. That's going to feel great for them. So
Mm-hmm.
Any closing statements you want to say about the Sonic the Hedgehog Saturday morning cartoon?
Well, it for the longest time was actually quite expensive out of print DVD, but thankfully there is a affordable re-release. It does not have any bonus features, but considering this thing was going for close to $100, and now you can get it for like $20, I'd check it out. It's a fun series. I think it's one of the better animated Sonic series. It's just unfortunate that it really didn't last that long and didn't have a proper conclusion. So I'm actually very excited to see what the team season can whip up, and hopefully they don't give us another cliffhanger.
Right.
But yeah, it's a very important series. The comics, the way it did and didn't tie into the games, considering we had Sonic Spinball, and we did that recently unreleased game. Sonic Games episode. Remember that?
Right.
Which had a Saturday morning one. How about you? What are your thoughts on this before we get to our Patreon picks?
So, very, like you said, a lot of the aspects of this show, even though it wasn't done by SEGA Japan, kind of lived on with the comic books. And you could tell they wanted to make it canon in America with Sega's Technical Institute wanting to put in ideas from this TV show into the video games. I think Sonic Mars, and then there was Sonic Extreme had some ideas, the Kingdom ideas, and the Ring Power ideas. So it definitely lives on, especially in the IDW comic with the Freedom Fighters. So and fans bringing the third season. So think we'll have a lot more of this in the future. So that's all I have to say. Also, I think it's also on streaming service. I know you can stream it on YouTube and like those kind of sites. People have uploaded it, but I think it's also on Paramount, isn't it?
It might be. I'll have to check. But yeah, a lot of the shows are on streaming. But I think people like owning it.
I forget your the physical squad. Barry's a physical,
especially with
which I'm okay with.
This one's great. This one's great because it has so many bonus features. I think you can see them there. It's a conversation with Ben Hurst, a conversation with Jaleel White, a storyboard to screen comparison for the Doomsday Project, a printable PDF script of heads or tails, storyboards for an unproduced opening sequence, concept art, and deleted and extended sequences. So you're not going to get this on streaming. So if you are looking for it and you're a super fan, this is the one to get. So I'm going to read what our Patreon pickers, or Patreon supporters I should say, what their memories are. So first up we have Daniel Andres, who says, "Oh man, what a blast of nostalgia.
Right.
I'm getting a little teary-eyed thinking about SatAM. I remember when I was 9 years old, I really wanted to see Sonic OVA around the year of 2003 or 4. I can't remember how I discovered it, but I knew of it, and it was just called Sonic the Movie at the time. I asked my dad if he could please rent it from Blockbuster next time he was there. Well, one Friday night, I got all my homework done. From school that evening, my dad came home with a Blockbuster DVD rental that was labeled Sonic the Hedgehog, but it obviously wasn't the OVA, and said it was a handful of SatAM episodes. My dad told me that they didn't have it, so he got this instead. At first, I wasn't 100% happy, but I understood, and I still enjoyed what I got. Shortly after that, I watched practically the whole show on YouTube. Absolutely loved it at the time, but I desperately have always wanted a Season 3. I do own the complete series DVD, and I used to watch it constantly. DVDs have a lot of wear and tear on them. I also used to have a friend named Trevor who watched this show with me in my late childhood days. Right around when I turned 14, though, we fell out of touch. For the most part, I have outgrown SatAM nowadays. I still sort of enjoy it and get nostalgic for it, and I'm looking forward to the fan-made Season 3 project. However, it suffers from the same issues that other Sonic shows suffer from. It just does its own thing. It's not very Sonic. Now, that's not 100% a bad thing. It just isn't what I personally want out of a Sonic TV show. I still feel that Sonic X holds the crown jewel of being the best Sonic show alongside the Fanimation trilogy Sonic Nazo Unleashed. They are the best pieces of Sonic media outside of the games. Even though I may not be the biggest fan of the show anymore, I still feel like the characters that have been spawned from it still matter and need a proper return to the form someday. Hopefully they'll have it in Sonic Prime. That would definitely help the show's ratings. Ben Hayward says, I fondly remember both SatAM and the other Sonic cartoon of the same era growing up in Australia. However, looking back, I don't think I really remembered them accurately. Growing up, I always seemed that the SatAM cartoon was way more stylish in its animation and more serious story. Maybe that was right, but the way I remember it was skewed than reality. I have, however, indoctrinated the theme song into my 5-year-old daughter's vocabulary. Oh, that's great. Brian Trong says, I loved the show and the theme song, was super bummed it got canceled on a major cliffhanger. And should we reveal now, George? You are actually Trevor, Daniel Andres' old friend.
Hi.
That's our cliffhanger this episode.
That is true.
You're Trevor, and then we will never follow up on this. This is we're canceled.
The reason I left is because he liked Sonic X better. That's why.
Yeah,
Just joking.
Exactly. Yes. Do you want to know, and do the listeners and viewers want to know what we're going to be doing in the next episode of Sega Talk?
I think you should let them know.
All right. Well, it's going to be a weird one. It's going to be a fun one. We are doing an unreleased Dreamcast games tier list. And that is going to be a chunky tier list because there are a lot of them. So I don't know if we're going to pare it down or if we're going to go with all of them. But it's going to be...
I feel like some of the major PC cancel ports should be there, but not all of them, because there was like, I think 100 of them came out on PC and just never came out on Dreamcast. So like... Some of the minor ones probably no, because there's like 100.
I think maybe we just stick with games that were never released anywhere, because I feel like to say, oh, this was on PC, but they were going to do a Dreamcast port, kind of is like, well, you can still play it, you know.
But how about like
there.
Half-Life Blue Shift? So that's a big one, right? And that one, so right. Like that's something you have to think about yourself. You're making the tier list, so
yeah, that's true. So that'll be a fun one. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. This is this episode of Sega Talk. Bye.
Yeah, it is. Bye. We don't have a sign-off.
We don't have a sign-off. We just say bye, right?
You'd be like, this is...
I was like, dang, I don't have a sign-off.